So I'm Ellen Sanderson-Clark. I'm a town planner by background, sort of predominantly working on large-scale city centre regeneration projects, but I'm currently working full-time on this Delivery Associates Network programme. So I've sort of been fully immersed on the developer side and on the public sector side. Public consultation is obviously a really key part of town planning processes, and I've worked on a variety of projects that have need various different approaches. So yeah, looking to share my experience on the importance of public consultation today. I'll hand over to Angeliki to introduce herself too.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Angeliki Stoja. I am a stakeholder engagement and communications associate, and I am based down here in Manchester or up here in Manchester, depending on where you are geographically, where I lead a team of stakeholder engagement consultants. My passion is engagement, and my experience is in complex client projects that require significant attention to engagement that are ranging from water, energy projects, transport and regeneration. And I'll be very happy to share some tools from my toolbox today as we go through the presentation. But I'm handing back to you, Ellen, for the first part of this presentation.
Thank you. So if we could skip through to just the agenda for today, I'll just very quickly run through what we're hoping to get through. We're going to start with sort of setting the scene for stakeholder engagement, and we want to keep this a sort of fairly interactive session, given that the topic is engagement. But we're gonna talk to you first, and then we've got a little Menti poll to sort of get the creative juices flowing, I guess. And then we're going to talk you through the importance of engagement and why we consult, and the challenges that we also face when we consult. And then Angeliki is going to run through her tactics for engagement for addressing those challenges and looking to sharing her insight on how to run an effective consultation programme. And then we're going to spend some time at the end sort of discussing overcoming common challenges, and we're also looking to sort of garner your feedback on what challenges you're facing, and so we can help scope some future webinars that go more in depth into specific challenges and issues that you might be facing. So without further ado, if we just skip on to the next slide. So like I say, we want to keep this interactive, be really useful for us to understand the issues and challenges that you're experiencing. We are here to help and respond to your challenges, and we want to make sure that you're getting the most from this session. So we'd like to start with a Menti poll, to sort of get a flavour about what the challenges are that you're facing and what you've what your experiences of quality consultations is so far. Just as a wider point, if you can stay on mute and raise your hand if you want to speak, happy to sort of have some engagement throughout the process. But if you want to sort of use the chat box for questions, or even if it's just a sort of observational comment, we'll save the chat and the poll responses, and that can help inform the scope of future sessions too. So yeah, really keen for you to engage where you can, and if you want to, please do put your camera on so that we can see you. So if you can use the QR code on the screen to access the poll, or if not, if you go to menti.com and enter the code there, that'll bring up the poll for you to answer. And the question is, think of a time when you felt truly engaged with a public project, campaign or community initiative. What was the one thing that captured your interest and made you feel involved? And if we can, try and keep it to 1 or 2 word answers if possible. We'll give people a few minutes to.
I see, Ellen, that there are a few things here that I'm going to be talking about with regards to the toolbox that are coming through. I think good communication is the one that is in bold, regular updates, which is great to see. Feeling valued, this is a very interesting one. Youth engagement. I wonder the person who wrote good communication, what they meant with it. What did good communication feel like?
Happy if you want to put your hand up or come off mute and share, or pop things in the chat if you want to add more detail.
Consistency.
Honesty.
Is a word that I like. Honesty, yes. A creative approach. Clear expectations. Wow, sounds like someone needs to sit on my seat. Drop in.
Realistic as well as a good one.
Brilliant. I see some really good words are coming through. Okay, this is great. I wrote good communication, says Liz, because she thinks knowing why the engagement is being done and what your feedback will be used for is really important. This is great. Precisely. There is a step that is not in my toolbox that entails setting out objectives for engagement at the start of the process. So you hit the nail right on the head there. And then Melissa says that creative approaches tend to have higher participation rate, which is true. Ellen, back to you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I think there's quite a lot there that hopefully we'll address as we go through. But yeah, it's nice to see that people have got some good understanding of what a good engagement process looks like. So yes, why do we do public engagement, stakeholder engagement, and why is it so important? I guess aside from being a regulatory or statutory requirement at some stages of the development process, effective consultation all stages of the process, of the development process, can make or break a project. Public engagement and consultation on projects is essential for fostering community support, leveraging local knowledge, ensuring inclusivity and equity, complying with the legal requirements, and I guess finally enhancing the sort of sustainability and long-term success of a project. It can transform regeneration from a top-down process that people feel disengaged from into a collaborative effort, and overall that will better meet the needs and aspirations of the community, who are ultimately the people who are going to be living, working or playing in the finished product. So it's really central to all development processes. So just taking each one in turn that we've got here, sort of enhancing community buy-in and support. I guess part of that is building trust, engaging the community. It fosters trust and transparency between the project planners or the decision makers and the residents. When people feel heard and involved, they're much more likely to support the project. And it can also serve to reduce resistance to projects. Ones that are sort of imposed, I guess, without consultation often face the most amount of resistance. And also engaging the public early can help identify the sort of concerns and issues, which can allow time to either have an effective consultation process and explain why the decisions are being made, or make adjustments to the project before it's too late, I guess. Which links with the next benefit of improving project outcomes. So I guess using local knowledge, residents possessing valuable local knowledge that a successful engagement strategy can really tap into, and can inform better sort of planning processes and decision making. They can provide insights on what their communities actually need and what their preferences are, and consider potential issues that people external to that community might overlook. And that can also lead to some more innovative ideas and more creative ideas that enhance the project's quality and relevance, and overall success, long-term success of the project. A fundamental part of engagement is enhancing the sort of social equity side of things. So inclusive development will engage a diverse cross-section of the community and ensures that the needs and interests of different groups, including marginalised populations, are properly considered, which ultimately promotes more equitable and inclusive development. And it can also serve to help address inequalities. So consultation can help identify and address existing social and economic and other inequalities, helping to ensure the regeneration project benefits as many people as possible. I guess fundamentally to a lot of projects, consultation is necessary for legal and policy compliance. In many jurisdictions, public consultation is a legal requirement, and adhering to these regulations is essential, not just for sort of project approvals, but also for funding opportunities. And it can also help with aligning with policy, planning policy or otherwise, to ensure that projects align with broader political and policy goals, such as sustainable development, social inclusion, economic growth, etc. And not on the slide, but I guess another sort of fundamental reason why we do consultation is because it ensures the long-term success of a project. Engaging properly with the community can create ownership. When the community is involved in the process, they develop a sense of responsibility and ownership towards the project, which can ultimately enhance its success. Ongoing engagement also allows for sort of adaptations to the project as you go. So where you've got feedback during and after implementation. Excuse me. Excuse me, getting too excited. So yes, ongoing engagement allows for adaptive management, and it can allow changes to the project during implementation and afterwards to make sure it remains effective and relevant in the long term. As well as sort of understanding the needs of internal stakeholders when we're talking about public sector or council projects, and the importance of their support and how they can impact a project can be well considered through the stakeholder strategy. So that's all sort of the ideal reasons of why we do a consultation. But as I'm sure you're all aware, I guess shown by the number of people we've got here, consultation, stakeholder engagement activities are not without their challenges. So we're going to talk about some of the key challenges. Sorry, we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. And the impact that has on projects and a high level consideration of how to address them. And Angeliki is going to sort of discuss the solutions and tactics in more detail later. So we've sort of put them in three buckets: poor public perception, diverse and transient populations, and resource constraints. Obviously aware that there's many factors that go into this, but just as a sort of general view, poor public perception, I guess the challenge itself is that many people might feel that decision makers are not transparent about their decisions, and I think that came through in the Menti poll responses, or that they do not genuinely sort of consider the public input. And this perception can really lead to a lack of trust and a reluctance to engage, which, you know, as we said before, can have a long-term impact on the success of a project. So it could result in distrust. It could also lead to skepticism and criticism of the development project itself, which could impact on sort of planning decision making or funding decisions or whatever else, other processes that you have to go through where you need sort of general support to a project. And I guess when we're talking specifically about public sector projects, it can have a wider impact beyond the development projects, such as on the perception of the council as a whole or the political influence. So it has potential for a really big impact. A simple solution, not without its nuances, is that decision making, improving the transparency of decision making, openly sharing information, clearly communicating the decision making processes and the factors that are influencing the decisions, and demonstrating how resident or community feedback or stakeholder feedback is used. So I guess that is that open and good quality communication that we talked about before, that is going to have a real impact on the public perception point. And we're talking about the diverse and hard to reach populations. I guess the challenge itself is that there's various people who are going to be impacted by a development project from different age groups, ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, and people with different levels of sort of digital literacy or accessibility. So reaching effectively and engaging all segments of the population can be really difficult. And the impact of that is that you would get unrepresentative feedback and decisions that don't reflect the needs and desires of all stakeholders, and ultimately it can make sort of groups of people feel excluded from the development process. I guess notably as well, the quieter voices can often feel a disproportionate impact of their voices not being heard. So it's a really important point to be able to listen to everybody who's going to be impacted by the development project. Again, a simple but not necessarily easy solution is sort of implementing multiple engagement strategies, a mix of in-person events, online platforms, social media, and targeting specific groups can help reach a wider audience, and also providing the information in multiple formats, different languages, can also increase the accessibility. I guess the final point is the constraints on resources. Public sector and other projects often operate with limited budgets, staff resources and time, which can constrain the ability to conduct a comprehensive and effective engagement activity when there's so many pressures on a project. The impact of that is that there's fewer engagement opportunities, insufficient follow-ups, lower quality interactions, which can essentially diminish the effectiveness of the engagement efforts. Again, simple solution, not necessarily easy, but front loading the engagement process with a stakeholder mapping exercise so that prioritization of engagement activities can be considered to make sure that the resources that you do have are deployed in the right way to engage the people who are going to be most impacted by the developments. Seeking partnerships with community organisations and leveraging technology can all streamline processes and help you sort of maximise the resources available. Additionally, there's always the option of seeking external funding or grants for specific engagement projects to provide additional support, or I guess considering other opportunities for getting funding or resourcing for those activities, because it's a sort of specific tangible work stream. I guess in conclusion, by addressing these challenges, we can improve engagement with residents and stakeholders, fostering a more inclusive and participatory decision-making process overall, to hopefully achieve all the benefits that we've talked about before and the reasons why we do consultation. I'm going to hand over to Angeliki now to share some engagement tactics on how to address these challenges. Although I have seen a couple of points in the chat, it's worth picking up those now. Don't worry. We've got some folk think that getting community support means ensuring that community doesn't object. We prefer to try and develop a sense of community ownership over the project solution, so more active involvement rather than simply seeking passive support. I think that's a really good point, and hopefully something that Angeliki is going to pick up on in more detail. And then we've got a further issue is that sometimes a completely separate issue the local community is unhappy about can hijack your engagement work. I think that's another really good point. And again, the point that those loud voices don't necessarily represent the views of the entire community. So thinking about how to engage the quieter voices to consider the impact of the project as a whole is a really important part of considering. I'll hand over to you, Angeliki.
Absolutely, Ellen, and I think also it's to what extent the issue that Melissa has flagged is, to what extent do you go in order to solve it and to address it, given the financial challenges and the different priorities the local authorities might have. So that might be an interesting conversation to unpick later on. So I wanted to talk about 5 tactics, if you like, 5 tools that we have in our toolbox, and I think some of you might have come across them before and or considered them before, judging from the answers that you gave to the first question that we posed. So I wanted first of all to reflect on what are the public, and this is actually another tool that we deploy when we start our stakeholder engagement strategies or stakeholder engagement or consultation for the projects. So it's thinking about who are the stakeholders for this project. Many clients that we work with, when it comes to thinking about stakeholders, they immediately think of the public, which then is followed by what groups does the public comprise of? It's the various businesses, the social groups, the general public, residents and communities. And I wanted to make sure that we differentiate here when we're thinking through who are we engaging with or who are we consulting with, that we differentiate stakeholders from the general public, because some of our clients feel that the project serves everyone or that everyone has a stake in what they offer. In some projects, this might not be true. It may not serve everyone, the project that we're looking at, or it may focus on serving a specific part of the community or the specific part of the public, or it can be primarily focused on the geographical area and its stakeholders. So stakeholders are those people or groups of people who have interest or influence in the project. And in these stakeholders, there's definitely 2 primary groups that this exercise helps us to consider. It is the people internally into the organization. So however you may want to group people in the organizations, be it politicians, the various council departments, Regeneration, housing and planning, corporate core, highways, transports, environmental services, your estates team, the leisure services, comms, press office. Those are some of the internal stakeholders that you might identify that are important to the project, people that are internal to your local authority and organization. And then externally, your stakeholders may be indeed residents that are affected by the project. It could be the government, your funders, the businesses, special interest groups like Heritage England, like the Environment Agency, like the Transport Authority, people who don't work for your local authority or contribute to the organization, who are external to it, but hold a stake in the success of the organization or the project. So flowing on from this, here is what we mean by stakeholder engagement is actively seeking stakeholder perspectives during planning, during implementing and running a project, and actively inviting participation and feedback on the project. And here's also where I wanted to just separate what do we mean when we say engagement and when we say consultation, because we have been using, people use these words at the same time. So the engagement is about building relationships, is about fostering trust, is about involving stakeholders in decision-making process, an ongoing process. And the role of stakeholders is a more active role rather than a passive. Here's the consultation questionnaire, answer it. So consultation is primarily around gathering information and opinions from stakeholders on a specific issue or a specific proposal. Many of us say, what is the scope of the consultation? What can we affect and what can we not affect? Especially when we're having these conversations around the group that Melissa spoke about in the chat. The outcome of the consultation could be consideration given to the views that are expressed during the consultation, but largely speaking, consultation, my experience is that consultation is that the horse is bolted, we are moving forward, this project is happening, I am asking you, are we taking this direction in the highways project, or are we having a radical renovation of the building, or are we just changing a few bits? This is what the consultation is about. The engagement, on the engagement, when you engage with stakeholders, generally we're talking about building relationships and decisions that are often made in a collaborative way with a significant degree of stakeholder input. So again, going back to, sorry, Annie, can you go back? If you go back to this tool is about when you are planning a project, it is crucial to distinguish between the general public and the specific stakeholders. Who are the individual groups with vested interest or influence in the project? So it's a brainstorming exercise. Who is interested on this project? And effective stakeholder engagement involves actively seeking input from both internal and external stakeholders so that the project can help mitigate risks that might come up in the future. So if you want to change the slide, I'm going to take you now to the second tool, which looks a bit more, oh my God, what is this in this slide? It's a busy slide. This is a stakeholder mapping exercise. This is a tool that we highly encourage our clients to do, is to sit down with your executive team, your management team, the team who is leading the process, and map out who are your stakeholders and how interested they are in the project. So we use the simple matrix of interest and power influence. So along the horizontal axis, we have the stakeholder interest, and in the vertical axis, you have the power or influence. So if you look at the red bit, this is the high interest, high power stakeholders. These are stakeholders who are interested in the work, interested in the project, and also have a very high influence to impact the project and its direction. So these are the people that you want to absolutely engage and make sure that they feel engaged. You need to keep them satisfied. It doesn't mean that you give them everything that they ask for or talk about. It means that you make sure that they feel heard. If you go to the green box, the low interest but high power stakeholders, these are the people that have been on board with the project and the interest is potentially waning, or they have got a number of projects that they're interested in. And this is just one of them. These are people that you truly also want to keep very engaged in the project. You need to anticipate their needs, talk to them, monitor their needs, seek their input at appropriate times, and really make sure that you stay in contact with them as and when they want to, and or at appropriate times in the project life cycle. So don't give them more information than they want to receive. Do not overwhelm them with information. Just choose your moment of when to engage with them in the project. Where you have stakeholder interest with a high level of interest but a low level of power, this is the blue box. These stakeholders, you need to make sure that you inform them completely and that you monitor your relationships with them quite closely. these are the people that will be knocking at your door. These are the people that will be sending you emails. These are the people that will be potentially organizing campaigns if they're not happy with the proposal. These are the people that you need to keep informed. You want to engage with them because you still want to understand their interest, despite the fact that they have low power. You want to understand what they say, and you want to know what their motivation is, and you want to make sure that they remain engaged with you rather than just throw bricks at you. Sometimes it feels like that. So let's go to the brown box now. For these people, this is where you can loosen up the engagement reins. You still want to keep them engaged, but you don't need to have the same level of engagement as with your high power, high interest people. These are the stakeholders that are probably going to be happy with sharing information with them. These are the ones that you need to design potentially special tactics to engage, and these are the ones who need less, if you like, of a touch. Doing this engagement or planning out your engagement with them is going to help you remember when they need to be engaged. But generally, they will be happy, these stakeholders, with you sharing information as and when it happens and doing check-ins as they need to happen. So this tool is a quick and dirty matrix, if you like, that you can use to start framing your engagement planning. You need to identify the name of the people in the groups that fall into these categories. This helps frame who are the stakeholders and where are the ones that you need special tactics to engage and where are the ones that you need less of a touch. So doing this really helps you to kick off the process. We offer this as one of the first few tactics when we have discussions around a project. So the key message around this is to effectively engage your stakeholders. You need to start mapping them using a simple matrix of interest and power or influence, which helps identify where do you prioritize your engagement strategy. So especially if you are low on resources, then you know where do you need to be spending your time with your stakeholders. So the third tool, someone already mentioned it, the third tool, which is very important, is ongoing engagement. So this is about engaging hopefully at every point on the regeneration strategy, on the regeneration project, especially, as Ellen said, on the front end of it. It becomes very difficult when organizations that have an executive team, an SMT team, a leadership that creates a strategic, regeneration plan and then tells others how things are going to go. And then it is also hard when a local authority applies for funding for a project that they want to do, but they have not engaged anyone. So, they get the funding potentially, and then they have a whole lot of people to take through. This is, what the thinking was. This is why we applied for it. Then you put yourself in a position where you're backed in a corner asking questions and justifying, rather than working together to give them a chance to help you build the narrative and tell the story also to the funders. So it's really important if you want that the conversation is being created together with stakeholders. This will give you a better chance for the project to be successful and to mitigate the risks. So what you need to do is to tell your stakeholders that this is what you have got going on. This is the plan, if you like, for creating the plan. This is the process that we will use. This is when it will happen. These are the mechanisms we are considering to collecting input. This is who is involved. Just be transparent as you possibly can. and inform the stakeholders about the planning process, what it will be like. So there's different stakeholders that sit in different sides of the local authority, internally and externally, and they have different perspectives, different insights on the project and the issue that you're trying to address, and different inputs, and they can help you see blind spots. So someone might come from the estates and tell you, oh, well, actually, we're doing this strategy in the estates. It doesn't, you need to adjust your thinking because this is what we have got going. Or the highways team might tell you that the passenger transport authority has got this program, here is where we can get some more funding for this, or you need to talk to sort of X, Y, and Z. I think that you probably already know this. I think reinforcing and reinforcing knowledge that you already have. So if you are doing as much as engagement up front, you're on the money. So one of the conversation that you need to have with your stakeholders is what they can expect in terms of communication updates. So tell them what you will tell them, then actually tell them, then deliver the information and the updates as promised. And then it is also important on the back end that you follow up, make sure that you have a true understanding of what their stakeholders have, a true understanding of what you have shared, answer their questions, address their concerns. It's not your job to make everyone agree with your plan, but it is your job to do everything that you can to achieve alignment around the essence of the project direction. And these are two very different and distinct approaches. If you are responsible for the project, you need to make sure that you know who your stakeholders are, make sure you tell them that it is happening, make sure you address the questions and concerns as they come up, and follow on their understanding. Consistency is key, and consistency builds trust. So the other thing, the tool that I'm not going to talk to you about is, you might have heard it is a project message house, so that everybody that talks about the specific project, they use specific ways to talk about this project. So the key message for this slide is engaging your stakeholders from the outset of a regeneration project is crucial. It helps you build trust. It helps you ensure alignment. It helps you prevent conflicts. It helps you deliver the project on time and onto budget. So involve your stakeholders early. Try and be transparent about the process, consistently communicate to foster their buy-in and support for the project success. Don't think that you're overdoing it. People have got very short attention spans, and to cut through the noise, you need to be consistent. So I would be more concerned about people in my team giving different messages about the project rather than repeating 6, 7, 8 times the same messages through different communication channels. So, tool number 4. Considering the diversity of your stakeholders. Someone is running with the presentation, so hold your horses. Even after you have mapped your groups and you have used the matrix and you have 4 distinct groups of stakeholders, even within those groups, there is tremendous diversity. So what I've got here is the demographic diversity. So consider the inclusivity of various groups in the project and the initiative. Recognize and address the different needs of the demographic groups such as age, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. I think that most of you already should be on this. So this ensures that all community members, regardless of their background, they have equal opportunities to have their voices listened, but also to feel heard. So ensure that the engagement methods that you're planning are accessible to all demographics. And now I'm also talking about the geographical diversity. So this might include for example, engaging with older people. They may be more agreeable to attending an event in the local community, in the local surroundings, at a venue that they know and they have been to, maybe would be more likely to attend during daytime rather than having to travel off to the town hall in an evening, which might suit better those who work near the town hall and can drop in, for example, after work. So another example on this is, you know, that you are not going to be engaging with politicians in April when there's elections in May. So it's, you know, the same way, consider your stakeholders, consider where is best to catch them and also what works for them. And, you know, like someone has said in the chat, if you can, do be creative. There's a lot of examples and a lot of local authorities that are doing brilliant things on the ground, working with communities. Finally, I think, you know, get to know your groups not as a monolithic mass of people. There's various ways also that people learn, that listen, and that communicate back and think about the different roles, the different interests, and also how this project, how this program might impact them. So acknowledge that they have different and varying levels of influence in the project. They might be interested at it as a resident. They might be interested as, you know, a resident who lives in the ward or in the geographical area, but also works for a voluntary community sector organization, or someone who is a sole trader and runs a business. So the key message here is, even if you map out, understand there is diversity on how you communicate with stakeholders, consider their needs and tailor your engagement strategies to be inclusive and accessible, and ensure that everybody has got a fair chance to take part in what you're trying to do. So final tool. Before we get into a discussion, we will soon be turning the tables and asking you what are your challenges in your engagement, is something that people often try, or people often who are very, very busy especially, don't pay much attention to. And if there is one thing that you want to take away, it is very, very important to track, to monitor and to report. I know that local authorities have been through lots of rounds of restructuring, redundancies, people moving around, working with consultants. It is ever so much more important, or secondments and all of that. It is so important to track, monitor and report engagement activity. So if one of the goals in the process is and should be to strengthen the stakeholder relationships just across the board, letting everybody know what's happening and what is going on, the more you record what you are doing, so you know that we have met with this team, this is what they have said, these are the follow-up actions, so that when somebody else picks up the project, they know what is going on. But it is also very helpful to have an audit and take stock and see, you know, where you are. And it is also gets you, if you like, in the culture of engagement, and it makes your practice better when you record where you are, where you want to go, who you have heard from, where they have said. And then also it is also very important for these FOIs that some people every now and then receive. So the key message here, and we can give you this tool if you think that it is useful, we can give you various forms of spreadsheets. But the key message in this slide is, to build strong stakeholder relationship, it is crucial to track, monitor reports on your engagement efforts, ensuring that there is transparency throughout the process. This transparency will help you mitigate the risks like misalignment, fosters that culture of involvement, which is key to success of any strategic regeneration process. So we spoke about the 5 tools, who the stakeholders are, mapping them, engaging with them all the way and continuously, and and then considering the diversity of stakeholders, tracking, monitoring, and reporting. And if you want to move to the next slide, and I'm going to hand back. No, I'm not handing back, actually, Ellen. I am doing this exercise, aren't I? So we're going to discuss about your challenges now. And we have another Menti question. So if you go back to, if you do have your Menti in your device, there will be a question that comes up. What are the engagement challenges that you face in your project? So what we wanted to do is, if you reflect on your own and if you jot down the challenge that you face, I think you've got 250 characters. If you can give us a flavor, we're going to stop recording now because we're getting into the conversation. So we don't want this. We don't want everybody to see this. We want you to freely tell us what is your challenge, and then we're going to ask you potentially to expand on the challenge. If it's not, politics is always a challenge. We are going to ask you to expand on the challenge, and then we have got an exercise on the Menti where we ask you to prioritize a few areas that we have grouped together in order for us to hold potentially workshops or create guides in the future on what is important to you. So there's one thing, me sort of asking myself and thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great to do a stakeholder workshop? I want a stakeholder identification workshop. If this is not what you want me to do, just tell me where is the best, what is your challenge, so that we can best create resources and tailor future webinars on what we can help you with, and focus specific time on that. Okay. So we've got 32 people and 1, 2, 3, 4 responses. So, you know, please get writing. So what we've got so far, cinema and bowling alley paradox. If you ask people that what they want to say, what they remember for decades ago, not what may be viable. This is a very good challenge. This is a really good challenge. I think this is something that many of our clients are facing with regards to engagement. You know, we always said that we're going to do this, and now nothing is happening. You haven't done anything, or this project is tinkering with the edges and not solving the problem. People not understanding also funding in the councils and what are the challenges. But also, I think another challenge is, I am talking out loud, giving you time to put responses. I think the other challenge that we are coming across with clients is, so you're cutting adult health and social care, but you're building this really nice building, and why don't you spend it on homelessness? So it is about, how do you engage, how do you communicate, how do you make sure that you have a consistent narrative, and how does your project fit with the comms team overarching narrative around spending resources, around funding cuts, and around investing in your local authority area. So what have we got? Let me just, I think I waffled a lot. I'm going to start responding or reading out now from your responses. So we've got the politics together, potentially with weak governance structures, which is a challenge. Lack of internal resources and expertise, which is also important. Funding timescales, so pressure to deliver, I guess, and thinking about where engagement fits within that, because engagement does take time. Prominent stakeholders oppose the project due to vested interests. I would like to hear more about this, if someone is brave enough to tell me a little bit on how we can help with that. I wonder now, Ellen, you can please feel free to come in. I wonder what lends itself into how we group together something that can be a workshop. So, I step back and a little bit more generic, and then where potentially we could offer or we can have follow-up discussions regarding a specific sort of bespoke project. Can you scroll down, Annie, a little so we can see a little bit more?
I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about the weak governance structures point, if whoever put that would be willing to speak up. I guess my question is, what do you mean, a lack of decision making within the council, or weak governance structures that are therefore sort of impacting the ability to
or
consult?
Is it
or
weak governance structures within the project? So who is responsible, especially if it's a multi-stakeholder project, who is responsible for engagement? How do we all speak with one voice? And how do we listen to feedback and incorporate it into the project and present it to the project boards? It could be that. Please put your hand up or use the chat function. We're not being recorded, so this is your chance to tell us where you need help. Or
pick up separately if need be.
Or pick up separately. Daniel Fisher.
Yeah, so mine was the vested interest one at the very beginning. I can't really say too much about this anyway, but we have some very loud and prominent businessmen who oppose the scheme that we're doing because parts of it will directly compete with their business interests. So they then make up lots of other objections. They never openly state that that's the reason why that they're opposing it, but we know that that's the case, from like talk on the grapevine, and it's just blatantly obvious. And a lot of the objections that they put out are misinformation or are contradictory to themselves. So they'll say that we can't do X, Y, and Z because that will negatively impact this, and then we can't do X, Y, and Z because we want to promote this, which is in direct conflict with something else, mainly around tourism and industry and things like that. So we know the games that they're playing and we know why they're playing them, but it's just very hard to constantly be putting out fires when there's lots of misinformation, and they're very effective at rallying people to their cause.
Dan, we can take this conversation away, but where I would probe is, what is the relationship, and if there is some relationship, if it's worth spending some time to try and build and mend that. But let's just take it away. And then also the other question that I would ask is, who are their friends and who are their influencers, and if there's anybody else in the business community that can help you show other stakeholders, the other side of the coin. But thank you for your input. Can we just read a few over here? How we communicate the project consultation engagement is also challenged. Online social media promotion misses some groups, but printing flyers is not an option cost-wise. Yes, I agree with that. This is a very, very common challenge. It is consolidating or gauging, looking at your demographic. Do you go online, or do you engage with traditional ways that you used to engage? So, leaflets in community venues and libraries. Overall, I would say that there is a move going more towards online media and not printed resources. However, there are, at the same time, there is a lot around trying to engage people in their own venues with drop-ins and with workshops, so that again there is very close proximity with people on the ground that might not have access to online or to online resources. there is also a misconception around people being able to engage with online media or online resources. I think lockdown has showed us that older people, yes, do engage, and they have kept the habit of going online and using the internet. I think I'm going to move on. We will take this with Ellen and the team, and we will digest, and they will inform our proposals to the team around where to focus energy in the future webinars or resources. But before you go, I really wanted you to respond to the last Menti question, which asks you to prioritize where we should focus support. And this is generic support. So this will look like maybe an article, or maybe a guide, or maybe another webinar. So it would be great if you can tell us, or if you can put to the top on the Menti your highest priority. So people talked about resourcing in its different guises. Managing expectation, I think this includes how do you deal with pressure groups, how do you deal with businesses, how do you deal with those that have got, if you like, the wrong end of the stick and remaining the side of the fence that we want to move them from being against the project and not seeing its benefit to more positive. Then setting clear goals. This is about, you know, what are you planning to do and how are you going to do this? But it is also, again, when you're in the middle of the process, how do you take stock where you are and readjust, recalibrate where you spend your stakeholder engagement energy. We've got less than a minute, and I don't like people being late for the next meeting. So thank you so much for Ellen. Please unmute yourself if you've got something to add. Yeah. I wanted to thank you all for participating and for your views. What comes next is a discussion and possibly some more webinars and or guides and resources. Please feel free to contact Ellen, myself, or your contacts if you want dedicated support on stakeholder engagement.